Friends, we finally have answers. Last night, President Trump gave us the timeline we've all been waiting for on those $2,000 dividend checks, and I need to walk through this with you because the details matter for our community. We're seeing breaking headlines roll in, and some of what's being said is encouraging, while other parts require us to manage our expectations together. Here's what dropped in just the last 14 hours. Trump confirms $2,000 tariff rebate checks won't arrive before Christmas. They're now scheduled for 2026. We're also hearing the White House has doubled down, saying Trump remains committed to these $2,000 tariff dividend payments for families. And here's something critical for many of us. There's talk that these checks could be limited to families earning under $100,000 a year, with Treasury Secretary Bessent saying they're planning to reach 150 million American families. I know many of you have been budgeting around this, planning, hoping, so let's go through every detail together so we can make informed decisions for our families. Before we dive deeper, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so we stay informed together as a community. This channel exists to keep us all updated on benefits, payments, and policy changes that affect our daily lives. A quick like helps this information reach more people in our community who need it. Now let's break down exactly what's happening with these payments and what it means for us. So here's where we stand right now, and I'm going to share the actual video footage with you in just a moment so you can hear directly from the president himself. The White House is confirming that Trump is committed to getting these $2,000 checks out to us, but the arrival date has shifted from what many were hoping. We're now looking at sometime in 2026, not this holiday season. I know that's disappointing for families who are counting on that extra support during the expensive holiday period, but let's focus on understanding the full picture so we can plan accordingly. What makes this significant is that we're hearing this commitment directly from multiple sources within the administration. This isn't just speculation anymore. Trump himself addressed this aboard Air Force One on his way to Mar-a-Lago, and his top economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, has now come forward saying there's actually enough tariff revenue to cover these payments. That's a major development because earlier this week, we heard Treasury Secretary Bessent expressing doubt about whether the checks would happen at all. Now we're seeing that position shift, with the administration getting their economic team aligned on making this a reality for us. Let me show you the footage so you can see this for yourself. This came out just yesterday, November 15th, 2025, and you can hear the exchange between reporters and the president about when we might see this money. The reporter asks directly about the timing, whether Americans could see these rebate checks in time for Christmas and holiday shopping. Here's what Trump said, and I want you to hear his exact words. No, not for this year. It'll be next year sometime. When pressed for a specific time frame, he explained, sometime during the year, next year. It's a lot of money, but we've taken in a lot of money from tariffs. The tariffs allow us to give a dividend if we want to do that. Now here's the part that matters for our community members who are working hard to make ends meet. Trump went on to clarify that they're planning to do this dividend that people can spend however they need to, but they're also planning to use tariff revenue to reduce the national debt. And critically, he confirmed that these checks are not going to go to high-income earners. So if you're in our community of middle-income and lower-income Americans, this program is designed with us in mind. The article that just published confirms what we heard. Americans won't receive a $2,000 rebate check from the federal government before Christmas. President Trump made these comments aboard Air Force One on his way to Palm Beach, his 14th trip there this year. The proposed checks will not be distributed before the end of the year, but the plan is still moving forward for 2026. Trump has specifically proposed sending $2,000 checks to most Americans while excluding high-income earners. Earlier this week, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said no decision had been made yet on the exact income limits, but we're hearing strong signals that the $100,000 threshold is where they're heading. Here's what we need to understand about the process, and this is where being informed helps us advocate for ourselves. For these rebate checks to actually reach our bank accounts, Congress would need to authorize them, similar to what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic when stimulus payments went out. Trump has been addressing this issue multiple times just this week, which tells us it's a priority for his administration. In a social media post earlier this week, Trump wrote that all money left over from the $2,000 payments made to low and middle-income citizens from the massive tariff income coming into our country will be used to substantially pay down the national debt. Now, let's talk about the realistic math here, because understanding the numbers helps us gauge whether this will actually happen. While Trump hasn't provided detailed breakdowns, early estimates from budget experts suggest that these checks would cost more than the tariffs are currently generating. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget reported that if the payments were structured like the COVID-19 stimulus, these $2,000 dividends would cost approximately $600 billion. That's roughly twice what tariffs are expected to generate in the near term. A Congressional Budget Office report from August estimated that tariffs could bring in about $4 trillion over the next decade, but that report came with important caveats. The CBO noted that tariffs will raise consumer prices and reduce the purchasing power of American families, so we need to be realistic that while we might receive a $2,000 check, some of that benefit could be offset by higher prices on everyday goods due to those same tariffs. That's the honest reality we're dealing with. Another article that dropped today confirms Trump says $2,000 dividend checks will be sent next year sometime if the plan moves forward. Americans likely won't receive these proposed checks ahead of the holidays, but Trump speculated that if his proposal moves forward, select taxpayers would get the funds in 2026. Speaking aboard Air Force One, Trump told reporters, "It'll be next year sometime." So there we have our timeline, straight from the source. What gives this proposal more weight than typical political promises is that the White House press secretary was asked directly whether the administration is committed to getting $2,000 checks out to the American people. Her response was clear. Yes, the White House is committed to this. She confirmed that they want to get this done and that all of their economic advisors are working to try to see if they can push this through. That level of public commitment matters because it creates accountability. Here's where things got interesting this week. Initially, we heard Treasury Secretary Bessent expressing uncertainty about whether actual checks would be sent out. He suggested that maybe the president meant the benefit would come through no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security rather than direct payments. But since then, we've heard him confirm that no, the administration does want to send out $2,000 dividend payments, and those would be targeted at families earning under $100,000. That clarification is crucial for those of us in that income range. Take a look at this development that came out yesterday. One of the top economic advisors in the Trump administration, Kevin Hassett, said there is enough tariff revenue to cover the $2,000 checks. Here's his exact quote. "It's something that will require legislation, but if you look at how much tariff revenue has been coming in, then there would actually be enough room to cover those checks and not go into the rest of the budget." Hassett is the director of the National Economic Council, so his endorsement carries significant weight. His comments represent the most concrete support yet from a senior economic official that Trump's proposed $2,000 tariff dividend could actually be financially feasible. Why does this matter so much for our community? Because, as we all know, tariffs often end up raising prices on everyday items for American families. The $2,000 dividends could provide welcome relief to many low and moderate income Americans who have experienced inflation eating away at their purchasing power. While Trump and Treasury Secretary Bessent have been discussing these dividends, congressional approval would be needed to actually get the money into our hands. Hassett's comments are encouraging because they signal that the administration has done the math and believes this is achievable. Here's what we know about the details so far. Trump has said clearly that the checks would go to middle-income people and lower-income people, not higher-income earners, though he hasn't yet clarified the exact thresholds for who qualifies. Right now, Trump's proposal remains entirely theoretical, with no formal legislative steps taken to advance it yet. Speaking to reporters on Thursday, Hassett acknowledged that dispersing these checks would require legislation. When asked whether he was working with Congress to progress such legislation, Hassett said, "We are actively studying the matter and getting the numbers straight so the president has all the choices he needs to decide what to do. Let's look at the actual revenue numbers so we understand the foundation this proposal is built on." The government raised $195 billion in customs duties through fiscal year 2025, according to data directly from the Treasury Department. That number is more than 250% greater than what was collected in the previous fiscal year, which shows tariffs are definitely bringing in substantial revenue. However, it's lower than the trillions the president has claimed his tariffs have already generated. Erica York, the Tax Foundation's vice president of federal tax policy, noted in a social media post that even after excluding high-income earners, which she classified as people earning over $100,000, the proposed $2,000 tariff dividend would cost nearly $300 billion, which is more than what the tariffs have generated so far. Now let's hear from some financial experts about what they think, because getting multiple perspectives helps us form realistic expectations. Michael Ryan, a finance expert, offered this perspective. Tariffs are essentially a tax Americans pay at the checkout counter, so while a $2,000 check might sound good, tariffs on imports drive up prices on everything from groceries to clothes. Part of that dividend gets clawed back through higher costs. That's an honest assessment we need to consider as we evaluate the real impact this would have on our household budgets. Kevin Thompson, CEO of 9i Capital Group, offered a more skeptical view. A lot of people are assuming this will look like the pandemic-era stimulus, but I don't see that as being the case. If anything does pass, it will be symbolic. Hard checks aren't happening. That goes directly against the Republicans' agenda of debt reduction, and they're not going to reverse that stance with a new round of payments. Long-term, this isn't a COVID-style injection of cash into the economy. It's more of a policy adjustment than a true stimulus. So what happens next, and what should we be watching for? For Trump's plan to proceed, it would need to be approved by Congress. That means we need to watch what's happening in both the House and the Senate. The administration could potentially use the reconciliation process to pass this with a majority vote if they can't get broader support, but that's a complex legislative path. Meanwhile, the legality of the president's tariff policies will be decided by the Supreme Court. If the justices rule against the tariffs, that would fundamentally undermine Trump's ability to issue these checks since the tariff revenue is supposed to fund them. So here's where we stand together as a community. We're hearing clear commitment from President Trump and the White House that they want to make these $2,000 checks happen in 2026. We're hearing from top economic advisors that the revenue exists to support this. We're hearing that families earning under $100,000 would be the target recipients, which includes most of our community here. But we're also hearing that congressional approval is needed, and we're hearing skepticism from some financial experts about whether this will actually materialize in the form of direct checks. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you believe these checks are going to happen? Are you planning your 2026 budget with this possibility in mind, or are you treating it as uncertain until you see concrete legislative action? What would a $2,000 payment mean for your family if it does come through? Share your thoughts below, because your perspectives help all of us think through how to approach this. Whether these checks arrive or not, I'll be here keeping you updated every step of the way. We'll track the congressional process together, monitor any Supreme Court decisions on the tariffs, and break down every development as it happens so you're never caught off guard. If you appreciate having this information explained clearly and honestly, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It's completely free, and it ensures you'll never miss an update that could affect your benefits or your finances. We're in this together, and staying informed is how we advocate for ourselves and make the best decisions for our families. I'll catch you in the next update. Take care of yourselves and each other.